Well, hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm coming to you from the Sky Club at the MSP airport near the G gates. This is a brand new Sky Club. I'm actually outdoors right now. There's a beautiful indoor area over there. What a great place this is. Honestly, with all the changes with Delta, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to use the Sky Club, so I'm taking advantage of it right now. Tonight I've got a flight to Paris on an Airbus A330 and you're coming along with me. And I didn't book just any Airbus A330. I booked a seat on Delta's brand new A330-900neo. I booked this flight purposely so I can complete my list of flying on every aircraft type currently in Delta's fleet. The A330neo has quieter engines and burns less fuel. The Neo stands for New Engine Option, and there are only around 110 of these aircraft flying in the world. The 900neo started flying with TAP Air Portugal, and I'm happy Delta is now flying it. I'm celebrating the brand new aircraft type in this brand new Delta Sky Club, and just before leaving the Sky Club, I checked the Delta app to make sure I still have that window seat that I chose. Well, I was on an A330-900neo. Guess not anymore. While I still had my window seat, my aircraft type was just downgraded to an older A330-300. At least that's what the Delta app now shows. I think I need to leave the Sky Club and head on over to the gate area to see what's going on. If it's true, I'll be disappointed, but with the A330-300 being virtually the same size as the A330-900neo, it's not a huge change. Whatever the aircraft type is, you're still going to come with me to Paris. And here it is, tonight's A330-300. My flight, Delta 138, is now boarding, and I'm going to make the most out of this A330-300 to the City of Light. After all, I'll soon be experiencing the thrill of flight on a departure out of Minneapolis all the way to an arrival in Paris. And flying is always a great thing, so let's get on this aircraft as we're scheduled to be in the air very soon. Nice and quiet jetway here at MSP, headed to CDG. After walking past the more spacious premium select cabin, I made my way to the rear of the aircraft. Why do I choose a seat way back here? My logic may be different than most, but first it's behind the wing, and there are always less missing windows in the back, and main cabin seats are smaller, so the center of the seat is closer to the window than a premium select or Delta One seat. For me, after having flown in higher level classes, I've come to the somewhat rare decision that a main cabin seat is best, because it involves less straining to look out the window and film. Anyone else out there agree with me? I don't look at the booking process as purchasing a seat. I look at it as purchasing a window to see the world. This heavy jet boarded on time, and the door was closed in advance of our scheduled departure time. This is going to be a very efficient departure from MSP Airport because our departure runway today will be runway 30 left, which is directly behind the gate that we're at the G concourse. From the short walk from the Sky Club to the short taxi to the runway, efficiency rules tonight. I could not believe how quickly this wide-body aircraft was boarded and left the gate. Let's start our journey to Paris. We pushed back from gate G13 onto the ramp behind us ahead of schedule. Since we moved so quickly and the tug was released right away from the aircraft, I almost got the feeling that I was on a short domestic flight on a much smaller aircraft, so I had to keep reminding myself that I was going on a long-haul journey across the Atlantic Ocean. You can see how close our departure runway is. Here's another Delta aircraft using it right now. We'll be there very soon. Here's the sign indicating the presence of the runway by taxiway Alpha 4 outside of gate G13. Inside the cabin, the flight attendants ran the latest safety demo on the IFE screens. They kept the cabin lights on for this as they should, however, it made it hard to film out the window due to reflections, so I'm always eager for the lights to be dimmed so I can see and film outside. Our very, very short taxi will take us down taxiway Alpha under the guidance of Minneapolis Ground Control. When we begin our taxi to the runway, there will be no aircraft in front of us, and we started moving under our own power just 3 minutes after our scheduled departure time. And the time that it took to taxi to the runway was just 4 minutes. We took off just 7 minutes after our scheduled departure time. Yes, we will be landing in Paris ahead of schedule tomorrow morning. Alas, the cabin lights are off, and from this side of the plane I can see our departure runway 30 left. I always love when I sit on the side of the plane that the runway is on. We're nearing runway 30 left, a runway that's 10,000 feet long and 200 feet wide. Final configurations for takeoff are being made in the cockpit as the Minneapolis-based flight attendants have been asked to take their seats for takeoff. They didn't have much time after the completion of the safety demo to do their final cabin walkthroughs to make sure that the cabin was secure. Our taxi speed, however, seemed a bit slower than normal, and maybe that was to allow for everything that needed to be completed prior to taking off. Runway 30 left is parallel to runway 30 right. If we were to use runway 30 right, we would have had to taxi all the way around Terminal 1, so we're lucky for the short taxi, although I've never seen a heavy jet take off on runway 30 right. Once we turn around on the runway, we'll see the terminal, including the gate that we just left from on this side of the plane. Runway 30 left is acting as both an arrival and departure runway this evening. As we neared the beginning of the runway, there was another Delta airplane that was about to land, so we had to wait for this aircraft to pass by before the tower controller could clear us onto the runway. We then proceeded into position on the runway at the instructions of the tower controller, who told us to line up and wait. We won't be able to receive takeoff clearance until the plane that just landed clears the runway. Since we're moving slowly onto the runway and the aircraft that just landed will vacate the runway quickly, we'll have no runway delay and the controller will issue us takeoff clearance as soon as the previous aircraft is clear. The A330-900 that I'm on, November 822 November Whiskey, is powered by two GE CF6-80E14A engines. Oh, and by the way, I had mentioned that this was supposed to be an A330neo, but we got downgraded. Delta stopped flying the A330neo on this route just 2 days before this flight, even though when I purchased the ticket, it was on an A330neo. The last Neo that operated this flight was powered by two Rolls-Royce Trent 7072 engines. Oh well, we're all set for takeoff on this 8.5-year-old plane. Once we take off, we'll make a series of right-hand turns on the Wilston 7 departure procedure. As we become airborne, we're handed off to the Minneapolis departure controller, a controller who, unlike the tower controller who just issued us takeoff clearance, is in our radar room and has radar and audio contact with us only as we begin to turn to the right on an assigned heading. The runway pointed to the northwest and Europe is to the east, so a right-hand turn is a good idea, but the turn is not designed to get us to Europe. It's designed to position us to get toward our departure gate out of the greater Minneapolis St. Paul metropolitan area. And this turn helps us head in the direction of Wilston, an airspace fix along the departure procedure that we'll be following soon. Wilston is located over Tony, Wisconsin, a small village in Rusk County. And if you look at a map, Wisconsin is to the east. So is Paris. We're given a series of right turns to eventually proceed to Wilston as we climb over the southern part of downtown Minneapolis. Notice how I've chosen a seat on the right side of the airplane. There's a reason for this, and it's twofold. The first has to do with our departure out of Minneapolis, and the second has to do with our arrival to Paris. I thought the right side of the aircraft would provide the best views of downtown Minneapolis since our climb was initially to the northwest and then the northeast, and the downtown area is to the northeast of the city. In addition, regarding Paris, I checked the wind in Paris for the time of my arrival, and it was coming from the west. And, if everything goes according to plan, we'll be flying around the city of Paris to the north, then making a right-hand turn back around to land, and the right side will provide the best view of the city itself. Oh, and sitting on the right side means a nice look back at the runway and the airport that we just took off from. That's actually 3 reasons to choose a seat on the right side of the plane. Unfortunately, the heading that we wound up on after making the right-hand turn put us directly over the tall buildings of downtown Minneapolis, so my city view was limited. I did get a nice view of part of the east side of town, which includes the very prominent U.S. Bank Stadium, which is home of the Minnesota Vikings, and the University of Minnesota's Golden Gophers college baseball team for part of their season. We're now crossing the Mississippi River. For years, Minneapolis harnessed the power of falls in this river to power flour mills. Further down, the river separates Minneapolis from St. Paul, the other major city in this metropolis, often referred to as the Twin Cities. Here at this point, we're still in the city of Minneapolis. We're continuing along to higher altitudes along the Wilson 7 departure procedure toward Wisconsin as the departure controller eventually hands us off to the high-altitude en route controller of Minneapolis Center. Once clear of the upper Midwest, we'll be talking to Canadian controllers of NAV Canada. For now, I'm enjoying what I can see of the metropolitan Minneapolis area because there are clouds up ahead and we'll be in them soon. Our A330-900 is performing perfectly well in our climb. Since I've flown on the A330-300 before, you can check out other videos on my channel that I have about this aircraft, including what it's like to sit in the Delta One cabin in the reverse herringbone seating configuration. I'm happy you're here. Those window seats were just strange. The seat itself was just way too far away from the window, making it really hard to see out. Especially when the windows of the A330 aren't that large. It's just so much more comfortable back here for that reason. And being back here doesn't mean no service at all. As we reached our cruising altitude, flight attendants started the meal service. First was a full-size bottle of water. That was followed by a travel kit, but I disregarded it. It included earplugs and an eye covering. Dinner consisted of two choices, pasta or chicken. I had the pasta because, well, I just love pasta. After dinner, I made a quick trip to the closest main cabin lavatory to freshen up, and then while over Canada, I returned to my seat for sleep on this red-eye to Europe. I woke up over Ireland, but it was cloudy outside, so I didn't get to see much. Before we descended, flight attendants came by with the main cabin breakfast service, a breakfast calzone with fruit. This was the only choice available. Once meal service was over, we flew over England, but it was kind of hard to see down. We're near the southern portion of London, but it was hard to identify anything till we got to the coast of England by the English Channel. Here we can see the seaside towns of Southwick and Shoreham by the Sea. I love these views from up here. Once we cross the English Channel, we'll be flying over our destination country, France. My eyes are glued to the window as I await landfall on the mainland continent of Europe. Here it is, France. We're entering the country in the Normandy region. Our nose is pointed toward Paris, and we'll be approaching the city and the airport from the northwest. We'll begin our descent soon to Paris. Here's the city of Rouen, the prefecture of Normandy. It sits on the river Seine, which also flows through Paris, so we'll roughly be following the course of the Seine as we descend. Today, we'll be landing on runway 26 left at the Charles de Gaulle airport. To get there, we'll fly to the north of Paris, and then we'll make a right turn to the airport, which is located to the northwest of Paris. We'll turn back around and land to the west as the wind is coming from the west today. This will provide a headwind. I've flown this approach before, and I've always wanted to see more. The last time I flew this exact approach, I was on the wrong side of the plane to see Paris, so this time I made sure that my seat was on the right side of the plane since Paris would be on the right side. However, conditions were just too smoggy, and the city was at a distance. We'll be making a long and wide right-hand turn around to the runway after this downwind leg, which is far north of the sites such as the Eiffel Tower and the Arc de Triomphe. Oh well. Approach control has cleared us down to lower altitudes as we continue around the Charles de Gaulle airport in a series of right-hand turns. Not only did I miss out on the side of Paris, I'm also missing out on seeing the airport itself because it too is off to the right side of the plane, and it's even closer than the city of Paris. There's always something special about seeing the airport before you land at it. Maybe it's because as passengers, we don't get that straight-in runway view like the flight deck does, so any glimpse of the runway or airport before landing is always a special treat. It's an airport of notable size to see from the air, being the principal airport of all of France. The Charles de Gaulle airport has 4 runways divided into 2 pairs. There's a north set of 2 runways and a south set of 2 runways. Between the runways are the terminals, which are complex sets of multiple buildings. Today, we will be landing on the southernmost runway of the southern set of runways, runway 26 left. Runway 26 right is being used for departing traffic. The northern set of runways are labeled 27 left and 27 right. They're quite far apart from the southern set, allowing them to be a separate operation. As we turn our right base leg to final, we'll be crossing the final approach course to all the other runways. Perhaps that's why we're turning so wide. This way seems to have less interference with the other runways. The layout of the runways here reminds me of Atlanta, with 2 runways north of the linear terminal complex, 2 sets south of it, but with an additional runway in the deep southern border of the airport. CDG is a very busy airport. Over 57 million passengers passed through it in 2022. It's a really busy and somewhat hectic airport, and the approach to the airport from this direction really gives you no indication of the experience that you'll have once you land. The airport is located right at the edge of the metropolitan area. An approach from the opposite direction is over a more densely populated area as the city's suburbs extend to the northwest. We have been cleared for the approach, and we're about to intercept the straight-in final approach course to the runway. We still have about 7 minutes until we touch down, but we're well established very far out. This is a good indicator that we're at a very busy airport since we approached the airport from the opposite direction and are all lined up with the runway with 7 minutes left. There are no height obstructions here. The area below us is just flat land all the way down to the runway, and beyond, in case of a missed approach, the area is flat too. We're so far out that it's too early to check in with the control tower for landing clearance. We'll just continue along and descend to the runway for landing. This A330-900 has come a long way. And that's right, this is an A330-900, and by this point, I've completely forgotten that this flight was originally booked on an A330-900neo.
Hey viewers, pardon the interruption. I really hope you've been enjoying my videos. I strive to put out the best content to make my channel the best aviation channel on YouTube. And did you know that there's a way for you to support my channel? It's called Super Thanks, and it's available on every video that I produce. To give Super Thanks, click on the 3 dots under the video on the bottom right. Then click on Thanks. Use the slider to select the amount you'd like to give, then click Buy and Send. Sending levels start at just $2. Everything that you send from Super Thanks goes right back to this channel to make it the best channel out there. Thanks everybody. Now, let's get on with today's video.
We're almost there. The final approach occurs over the Saint-Marne department in the Ile-de-France region. Saint-Marne is located to the east of Paris, and we're in the northern portion of this department. The airport itself is partially located in Saint-Marne, as it's on the border between it and the next region, Seine-Saint-Denis. As a matter of fact, we'll be crossing the border between the 2 regions on the runway we'll be landing on at approximately the midway point. If I'm not pronouncing these names correctly, please let me know. We'll be passing by several communities on the final approach, and I'll be putting the names of the communities at the top of the screen rather than try to pronounce each one. I don't speak French. In the cockpit, we're about to switch frequencies to the control tower to receive landing clearance, and we'll put the gear down and we'll land on the runway. Let's proceed forward and get this bird on the ground. As we land, we see an Air France 777 about to take off on runway 26 right. We'll see that aircraft become airborne shortly. Take a look at the sky in the distance, and you can see another aircraft on approach to the northern set of runways. It's quite a distance away, which shows you how big this airport is. That flight's landing doesn't interfere with landings or takeoffs on the south side of the airport, as it's almost like being at a separate airport. That makes this airport very efficient, especially with all the runways facing the same direction. There goes that Air France 777 taking off. Of course, we'll need to cross this departure runway, but we won't be able to do so until the controller clears us across the runway when no one is taking off.
29. Please stay in your seats with your seatbelts fastened and all carry knives stowed until the captain has turned on the fasten seatbelt sign.
We actually waited for a second Air France 777 to take off before we were cleared across the runway. From there, it was a non-stop taxi to our gate. After we crossed the runway, other aircraft were allowed to take off. As always, I want to thank you for joining me on this hop across the pond. I can't wait to bring you more videos like this, so if you want to be alerted as to when my next video will come out, I invite you to click on the subscribe button below so you don't miss out on anything. See you all very soon right here on this channel. Thanks for watching.